What if being right isn't the point? What if being strong means asking for help? What if joy is hidden in the moments we overlook? In a world that teaches us to keep moving, these four reminders ask us to stop, reflect, and live with presence. They are not loud, but they echo in the quietest corners of your life. The moments when you're alone with your thoughts, when your pride softens, when your heart admits what your mind tries to ignore. These truths do not demand anything from you. They only ask to be remembered before the next regret, before another chance slips away. Because life is not waiting. It never has. Welcome to Trandy Wisdom, where every story is deeply worth remembering. 1. If you are right, don't waste time proving it to everyone. In the early hours before sunrise, when the mist clings to the trees like ancient memory, and the world has not yet remembered its noise, there is a moment, a breathless, trembling moment, when all things return to stillness. The mountains do not speak. The rivers do not rush. The wind, too, pauses in its eternal flight. And in that stillness, the truth of things is laid bare, not because it is declared, but because it simply is. Truth, in its deepest essence, needs no witness. It does not argue. It does not shout. It does not demand to be acknowledged. It just is. As the sun rises, as the stars burn, as the heart remembers its way home. In the teachings of the Buddha, there is a quiet reminder that what is real does not require defense. The Dharma is not something to be proven like a theory or weaponized like a sword. It is a lamp carried in the dark, not to blind others, but to help you see your own path. If you are right, truly right, not because of pride, not because of opinion, but because you have seen clearly through the eyes of wisdom, then why speak loudly about it? Why cast your voice into the marketplace of noise? To know and not need to declare, that is the fragrance of awakening. The world will tempt you to do otherwise. It will provoke you, challenge you, deny you. You will hear accusations echoing through family conversations, anonymous comment threads, whispered judgments in sacred halls. You will be told, in subtle and harsh ways, that your clarity is invalid unless it is agreed upon. And the ego, quick to defend its territory, will rise up in arms, crafting arguments, layering logic, sharpening language. But ask yourself gently, what do I lose when I start proving? And what do I gain by remaining still? For the one who has seen the moon does not argue with those who worship shadows. The Buddha himself was not immune to misunderstanding. He was accused of theft, deception, false teachings. He was ridiculed by the proud, dismissed by scholars, threatened by kings. And yet, never once did he demand that others see his truth. He offered his insight, as rain offers itself to the earth, with no demand that the soil be grateful. If the ground is ready, it drinks. If not, the rain moves on, unchanged in its essence. This is not passivity. It is profound wisdom. The desire to be seen as right is a form of grasping. It clings not to truth, but to recognition. It does not seek to liberate, but to win. And winning, in this realm of illusion, often becomes another layer of bondage. If you must shout your clarity, is it still clarity, or has it become performance? If you require others to kneel at the altar of your insight, has it now become idolatry? Truth, like a well-fed flame, does not flicker when ignored. It burns quietly, steadily, within. In the ancient forests of India, long before enlightenment became a word tattooed on wrists and sold in self-help seminars. Truth was pursued with silence. Monks sat beneath trees not to argue, but to listen. They did not debate the path. They walked it barefoot, humbly, with their bowls and their breaths. In that ancient rhythm of alms and awakening, the rightness of things was not a badge, but a being. If a teaching was real, it transformed the way you held your bowl, the way you met the gaze of a suffering stranger, the way your footsteps touched the earth without scarring it. Truth was lived, not spoken. But today, we speak too soon. We react too fast. We defend without reflection, and in doing so, we lose the precious stillness that clarity demands. We become attached to the role of being the one who knows. But in Buddhism, even right understanding can be a fetter. Even wisdom, when clung to, becomes a chain. There is an old Zen parable. A student ran to the master, breathless, saying, "Master, I was right. I argued with a scholar for hours, and in the end, he had no words left. I proved our way is better." The master looked at him, silent. Then he poured tea into the student's cup until it overflowed. "Master," the student cried, "it's spilling." The master said, "Like your victory, useless. And now you have no room to drink." To be right and humble is to be truly awake. Sometimes, the truest wisdom is to remain silent when provoked, to walk away when attacked, to keep breathing steadily in the face of misunderstanding. This is not cowardice. It is compassion, for yourself and for the other. What does it serve to push your truth upon someone not ready to receive it? Like feeding honey to a mouth that cannot yet taste sweetness, it becomes wasteful and bitter. Instead, you offer presence. You offer space. You offer a living example, not an argument. The Buddha once said that even if you speak the truth, if it is not spoken at the right time, in the right way, with the right intention, it is not in harmony with the Dharma. Truth must be clothed in compassion. Rightness must be offered with emptiness. Otherwise, it becomes violence disguised as virtue. And so, you must return to the deeper question, not am I right, but am I free? If your truth costs you your peace, it is no longer truth. If your clarity demands conflict, it has become ego. If your wisdom alienates rather than embraces, it is not yet ripe. The fruit of true understanding isn't control. It is letting go of needing to be seen, letting go of needing to be believed, letting go of needing anything from the world except the chance to love it anyway. Because in the end, what matters is not whether they agree with you, but whether you have loved them in silence. There is a power in this kind of letting go, not the power of conquest, but the power of light. Light does not demand attention. It reveals. The sun does not fight for recognition. It simply rises, and the awakened one does not seek to win arguments. They embody the truth in such a way that even those who disagree walk away changed, though they may not know why. To walk this path is to walk alone, often misunderstood, rarely praised. But it is to walk with joy, the joy of no longer needing validation, the joy of not exhausting your soul in the theater of persuasion, the joy of simply being in breath, in stillness, in truth. So next time the world presses you, provokes you, dares you to respond, pause. Feel your feet on the earth. Feel your chest rise and fall. Feel the quiet place in you where truth lives, not as a weapon, but as a whisper. And do not speak, unless your words will deepen the silence. You do not need to prove anything. You only need to be true. and in the garden of impermanence. That's enough. 2. If you're wrong, don't waste time pretending to be right. The winds that sweep across the Gangetic Plains are old. They carry the scent of burning sandalwood, of clay and jasmine, and the unspoken stories of generations who once knelt beneath banyan trees, searching not for glory, but for understanding. In the ancient city once known as Rajagaha, where kings once ruled and sages sat beneath starlit skies, a young monk once made a mistake, a serious one. He tried to cover it, twisting his words, shielding his error with silence. When the Buddha heard of it, he did not scold. He simply asked the monk, "What weighs more, the truth that humbles you, or the lie that binds you?" The monk wept, because in that moment he remembered that the path was not for the perfect, but for the honest. In the teachings of the Dharma, there is no shame in being wrong. The path is not paved with certainty, but with humility. It is not a journey of always being right. It is a pilgrimage of unlearning, of seeing again, of stripping away the illusions that cling to our identities like wet robes in monsoon season. Pretending to be right when we are not is like placing gold paint on cracked clay. It may shine for a moment, but it will not hold. To be wrong is not failure. It is invitation. Yet, how easily the mind recoils from this truth. How quickly we armor ourselves when we feel exposed. The ego, threatened by the possibility of being mistaken, rushes to protect itself, not with silence, but with denial. We twist our stories. We invent reasons. We cling to half-truths, like driftwood in a flooding river. But the cost is always the same. We lose the one thing the spiritual path demands above all else: sincerity. In the quiet groves where the Buddha walked, sincerity was the measure of awakening, not intelligence, not spiritual pride, not the cleverness to argue well, but the willingness to say, "I do not know. I was mistaken. I see differently now." These are not admissions of weakness. They are the flowering of insight. A wise person does not pretend to be right. They want to be shown where they are wrong, because they understand that seeing one's ignorance is the beginning of wisdom. They do not fear correction. They do not resist truth. They meet it like the thirsty meet rain. But to those who cannot admit fault, the path becomes a labyrinth. Every lie becomes a wall. Every denial becomes a weight. And soon, the traveler who once walked freely is burdened by the image of perfection they must maintain. They cannot stumble. They cannot question. They cannot change course, for fear that someone might say, "I told you so." And so they freeze in their false certainty, further and further from freedom. In one of the earliest sutras, a disciple confessed to the Buddha that he had spoken harshly to his teacher. His voice shook as he bowed, saying, "I was wrong." The Buddha looked at him and smiled, not because of the offense, but because of the courage it took to return. "You are now walking again," he said. "The one who turns back from pride is the one who reaches the shore." It is not being wrong that keeps us in suffering. It is the refusal to turn back. In modern life, this teaching is harder than ever. We live in an age that confuses apology with weakness, vulnerability with failure. We are encouraged to project certainty, to never doubt ourselves, to double down when challenged. Politicians, influencers, teachers, even friends, all are expected to maintain the illusion of being right. Always. To say "I was wrong" is seen as defeat. But the Dharma knows better. To say "I was wrong" is one of the most powerful acts of spiritual maturity. It is an act of releasing the self. It is bowing before the truth, even when the truth is inconvenient, even when the truth burns. And in that bow, something miraculous happens. The heart softens, the mind opens, and the path clears. The Buddha did not ask his disciples to be without error. He asked them to be without pretense. He knew that awakening does not happen in the glow of perfection, but in the ashes of humility. When we fall to our knees, not from shame, but from recognition, we rise again, lighter. One of the greatest illusions is the idea that we must be infallible to be respected. But in the eyes of wisdom, the one who admits their mistake is closer to truth than the one who clings to false righteousness. When we pretend to be right, we are no longer listening. We are no longer learning. We have traded the sacred mystery of growth for the brittle safety of certainty. Let it go. Let go of the performance. Let go of the fear. Let go of the voice in your head that says, "They will not respect you if they see you falter." Let go of the illusion that your value lies in being correct. Your value lies in your courage to return to truth again and again. No matter how far you've wandered, truth is not static. It breathes, it expands, it evolves, and so must you. In the forests near the ancient town of Sarnath, where the Buddha first turned the wheel of Dharma, the silence still holds the echo of this teaching. Monks walk the worn paths, not because they are always right, but because they are always returning. Every breath is an opportunity to begin again. Every exhale is an invitation to release what no longer serves, including the need to appear wise. If you're wrong, don't waste another moment pretending otherwise. The world does not need more perfection. It needs honesty. It needs humans willing to fall, to weep, to rise, to admit, to say, "Here is where I lost my way. Here is where I begin again." That is the mark of one who is truly walking the path, because in the end, the destination is not some mountaintop of absolute rightness. It is a vast and tender field of clarity, where the self no longer needs defense, where the heart no longer fears correction, and where the truth is not something we own, but something we serve. To be wrong is to be human. To admit it is to be free. 3. If you need help, don't waste time to ask for it. It began with a stumble, somewhere on the dusty trade road between Varanasi and Kapilavastu. A young pilgrim collapsed under the weight of his satchel and the heat of the noonday sun. His robes clung to his skin. His mouth was dry. His pride was louder than his thirst. He had told himself that he would walk the entire path, without asking for a single favor, without burdening anyone, without needing anyone. He had left home with the idea that spiritual strength meant self-reliance, that the awakened ones never ask, but the earth has a quiet way of unlearning us. Lying face down in the dirt, too weak to lift himself, he heard the sound of footsteps, not the thundering kind that demands attention, but soft ones, cautious, uncertain. A stranger knelt beside him, offered water, offered shade, offered a silence that asked no questions. The pilgrim turned away. He tried to speak, to say, "I'm fine." But what came out was the truth he had long buried. "Please, help me." And that was the moment his journey truly began. In the vast sweep of Buddhist teachings, few things are more misunderstood than the nature of help. We speak often of letting go, of non-attachment, of walking alone into the heart of impermanence. But this is not a path of isolation. The truth is quieter, gentler, more humbling. No one gets free alone. The Buddha himself was not exempt before his enlightenment, After years of severe asceticism, he collapsed by the banks of the Naranjara River. His body had grown too frail, his mind too thin. He could have died there alone, unnoticed, had it not been for Sujata, a village girl who saw in him not a saint, but a starving man. She brought him milk and rice, without question, without sermon, and he received it. That receiving, so quiet, so human, was not a detour from his path. It was the path. We rarely speak of this moment with the reverence it deserves. We glorify the Bodhi tree, the final meditation, the great awakening. But there is a sacredness, too, in the moment before all that, when the Buddha Tabai allowed himself to be helped. It was not defeat. It was devotion to truth. It was the letting go of pride, masquerading as strength. To ask for help is to confront the illusion that you are separate. In the modern world, the illusion has grown stronger. We are told to be independent, to solve our problems in silence, to smile through collapse. We build walls of competence, armor ourselves in productivity, and mistake the isolation for maturity. But beneath it all, we are trembling. We are overwhelmed. We are quietly crying out. Why do we hesitate to ask for help? Because we think it diminishes us. Because we fear being seen as weak, needy, or broken. Because somewhere along the way, we were taught that needing someone makes us less. But Buddhism teaches the opposite. Everything that exists arises in dependence. No raindrop falls alone. No lotus blooms without the mud. You aren't a separate island. You are the ocean briefly shaped into a wave. To pretend otherwise is not strength. It is self-deception. The Sangha, the spiritual community, is one of the three jewels of the Buddhist path. Not a footnote, not a support system. A jewel, as luminous, as vital, as the Buddha and the Dharma themselves. Why? Because even the deepest truths must be carried together. Even insight needs echo. Even awakening is shared. There is a moment in every journey when you will falter, not metaphorically, but truly. When the nights grow too long, when the breath catches too shallow, when the silence turns to despair, and in that moment, your freedom will not come from more effort. It will come from the courage to whisper, I can't do this alone. And someone will hear you. Maybe not the person you expect, maybe not with answers, but they will come. With tea, with listening, with presence, with something as small as a hand resting on your back to remind you that you are held and have always been. But for them to arrive, you must ask. Asking does not mean collapsing into helplessness. It means honoring the interwoven nature of all life. It means accepting that the path is walked, not by the heroic self, but by the surrendered one, by the one who has touched their knees to the earth and felt it answer back. There are kinds of help that do not look like help at all. The elderly woman who lets you sit beside her in the temple courtyard, not saying a word. The child who offers you a wilted flower with full sincerity. The friend who doesn't try to fix your grief, but simply keeps showing up. These gestures are not small. They are how the Dharma moves, through hands, through hearts, through kindness so ordinary, it almost escapes notice. To ask is not only to receive, but to remind others that they, too, have something to give. Your need can be someone's offering. Your surrender can be someone's liberation. When you admit that you need help, you give others permission to do the same. There is a kind of strength that doesn't roar. It does not stand tall. It kneels. It weeps. It reaches out. And in that reaching, it finds the invisible threads that hold this world together. A monk once told me that the hardest moment of his life was not when he lost his family or when he sat through his first week of silent retreat, but when he had to knock on someone's door and say, "I have no place to go." It was the breaking of the image, the shattering of self-sufficiency, and yet, he said, it was the moment he became real. We spend so much energy trying to appear whole, but wholeness is not about having it all together. It's about being honest, about where you are cracked. Because it is through those cracks that light enters, and it is through those cracks that others can reach in. Do not let shame speak louder than truth. Do not let pride delay healing. Do not wait for the perfect words, or the right time, or the final collapse. Just ask. Ask clumsily. Ask with tears. Ask with stuttering breath. Ask before you think you're allowed to. And when you do, the path will shift, not in some dramatic, cinematic way, but quietly, like wind changing direction, like the first drop of rain after a long drought, like finding, at last, that you were never walking alone, because you weren't, you never were. 4. Always remember, life is too short. Therefore, do not waste time on sadness and negativity. There is a field in the plains of ancient Kosala, where wild mustard blossoms once bloomed in thick golden waves. Travelers heading east from the markets of Savath would sometimes pause there, not for trade or shelter, but to sit in the trembling quiet as petals danced in the wind, reminding them of something they always knew but often forgot, that beauty is fleeting, and so is life. It is easy to speak of impermanence in philosophical tones, harder still to live it. And yet every teaching of the Buddha is rooted in this one truth, that all things arise and pass away, that the cup will shatter, the sun will set, the loved one will leave, and this breath, too, will one day be your last. In the face of that, the question is not how long do I have, but how shall I live? Most people don't waste time consciously. They lose it slowly, invisibly, drip by drip, through the habitual sorrow they no longer question. They carry old wounds like sacred relics, replay insults like mantras, and cradle grievances as if they offer comfort. And all the while, the days move on, seasons change, hair grays, friends drift, the body quietly ages, and one morning, they wake and wonder, where did it all go? Negativity is not just an emotion. It is a kind of forgetting. Forgetting that the moment in your hands will never come again. Forgetting that this sky, this breath, this face before you is unrepeatable. Forgetting that you, too, are on borrowed time. The Buddha did not tell us to escape sorrow, but to see through it, to recognize its impermanence, to meet it, not with clinging, but with curiosity. He once said that the only thing worth clinging to is the awareness that nothing is worth clinging to. And with that, he offered freedom. But freedom begins where bitterness ends. In the early monasteries along the Ganges, monks would sit at dawn and reflect on 5 daily remembrances. Among them, I am of the nature to grow old, to fall ill, to die. All that is dear to me will become separated from me. This was not morbid recitation. It was spiritual clarity, a reminder that because nothing is guaranteed, joy must be deliberate. Joy, in Buddhism, is not a mood. It is a discipline, a practice of choosing presence over regret, of watering what is good rather than mourning what has withered, of seeing that even sadness, when met with compassion, becomes light enough to carry. There is a temple in ruins near the foot of Vulture Peak. Its stones are worn smooth by centuries of barefoot pilgrims. Among those stones are carvings, now faded, of the Buddha smiling, not in ecstasy, not in denial, but in the simple, unshakable understanding that all things pass, that sorrow does not last unless we build it a home. Why do we waste so much time holding on to what hurts? Because it gives us identity, because it lets us blame, because it distracts us from the terrifying responsibility of being free. Negativity is safe in its own twisted way. It offers predictability, righteousness, familiarity. But it also chains us to a life unlived. Sadness has its place. The Buddha did not invalidate suffering. He illuminated it. The first noble truth is that suffering exists. But the second, third, and fourth are about liberation. The teaching is not that you must never feel pain, but that you must never nest in it. There is a middle path between suppression and indulgence, and that is the path of awareness. To know you are grieving and still reach for sunlight. To know you are afraid and still take the next step. To feel sorrow and still not weaponize it against yourself or others. In the village of Jetavana, it is said that the Buddha once sat with a woman who had lost her child. She wept and pleaded for him to bring the boy back. He told her to bring a mustard seed from a household that had never known death. She went from door to door and found none. And in that realization, that sorrow visits every home, her grief softened. Not because the pain had vanished, but because she was no longer alone in it. Sadness does not need to be exiled, but it must not be enthroned. What if, instead of asking why sadness comes, we asked why we insist on making it stay? What if, instead of trying to solve suffering with thought, we met it with silence, with breath, with the company of trees and rivers that ask for nothing but presence? The world is not free of sorrow, but it is also not free of wonder. Look up. The stars still rise, uncaring of your regrets. The moon still offers her light to all. Without judgment, somewhere, a child is laughing in a language you will never know. Somewhere, an elder is placing a bowl of rice at a shrine with hands that remember 100 winters. And here you are, alive. Is that not miracle enough to soften the edge of sorrow? We are not here forever. That is not a threat. It is an invitation to forgive quickly, to speak gently, to weep honestly, to laugh whenever possible, to place your bare feet on the earth and say, this moment, this one right now, this is mine to live. To waste time on bitterness is to forget your place in the great unfolding. To let days vanish into resentment is to turn away from the lotus blooming in the very mud you despise. And to cling to sadness as identity is to walk through a garden with eyes closed, insisting it is barren. You may grieve, you may fall, you may scream into the wind that life is not fair, and when you are done, you may rise and choose joy anyway. Not naive joy, not forced optimism, but the quiet joy of still being here, the sacred rebellion of choosing to love this fleeting world while you can. Because one day, you won't be able to. That day is not yet here. So do not waste the gift of breath on bitterness. Do not trade the infinite miracle of awareness for the small comfort of complaint. Do not let the clock of your one brief life tick out beneath the weight of what cannot be changed. Instead, walk into the light of what can. Breathe deeply. Forgive fiercely. Laugh loudly. Love without defense. Life is too short to be anything but awake.